Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Himalaya, Ghana, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Ambrose Pass Turner. She is here to celebrate Rex's journey, helping children cope with emotion. Before we invite Dr. Ambrose into the show, we want to invite all the authors that are listening to the show to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can celebrate your book here on the podcast. We would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost you a thing, and it gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell the world about your fantastic book. You can also submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read, letting families know that your book is worthy of their consideration. And we also have a fantastic promotion program. We can celebrate your book with a package of commercials on the podcast, messages to our 90,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Find out all about this and more by going to readingwithyourkids.com. And parents, please be sure you visit readingwithyourkids.com and sign up for our free newsletter. Join us right now from Columbus in the wonderful, beautiful state of Georgia. Our guest today is here to celebrate her debut picture book. It's called Rex's Journey Helping. Please welcome to the show Dr. Ambrose Pass Turner. Hey, Dr. Ambrose, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. And I appreciate you for having me.
You are very welcome. I'm excited to learn all about Rex's Journey Helping. Tell us about this book, please.
Okay. So Rex's Journey, helping children understand and cope with emotion, takes us on a journey of this little boy who has been experiencing some happiness and then sadness at times. And so what the book does is take you through the experience of him having behavioral changes and emotion changes. These changes affect his school, his attitude at home with his sister, and his friends. And so at school, the behavior became such an issue that the teacher, the principal, he was sent to the principal office, and the teacher called his parents and said that we think that Rex can benefit for having some counseling. And so they took him to see a counseling, and what the counseling did is have him to process and explore his feelings and his emotions to find out why he's feeling that way. And then the counseling helped him to find things that he enjoyed, things that make him happy. And these are things that are already within Rex. These are things that he always do, things that he enjoyed, like hanging out with his father, riding bikes with his father, playing with his sister, family times. You know, he enjoyed drawing pictures and things like that. So that was some of the coping skills that he was taught. And he also taught him how to use breathing techniques. So when you're dealing with young children, you know, the best way when they're this age group, I would say this age can be from 4 all the way to 11th grade. I have read it to middle school kids too. But like, a good way to help them remember breathing techniques is to remember how you blow out the candles on your birthday cake. And so when you start to feel, you know, angry and upset, or, you know, go to those things that make you happy. So that's what it is. It just takes you on his journey, you know, and how he learned how to, when he's not feeling well or feeling angry, how to express himself, how to talk to his counselor if he's at school, or his teacher, and talk to his parents. And then after, you know, everything. And after that, he was a happy-go-lucky little kid again.
You know, it sounds like Rex was really lucky that his the people in his school reacted the way we hope all teachers and principals and parents react, which is to ask the question, what's going on with Rex? Why is his behavior changing? Unfortunately, I don't know if every kid has that experience. I don't know if, when kids' behavior changes and a kid might have, an explosion at school or be disrespectful. I think too many times the reaction of the adults are, how dare you? And we need to punish this behavior.
Yes. And what I found out, because I've been practicing for over 20 years, to be exact, 29 years, and I have my private practice, and children don't act out without a reason. Mm-hmm. There's always an underlying cause, and especially when you notice changes, in your children. They don't. And I know the pandemic has been difficult for us as adults, and I have had a lot of children within my practice who had a difficult time dealing with the adjustment to changes when they had, especially when they had to go from in classroom to online, But this book is very good because I don't know if you can see the pictures, everyone can relate to the pictures within this book. Mm-hmm. Because you can see the emotions on his face. You can see him when he's happy and just enjoying, playing with his sister. And if you go on, you can see him out in the school, mm-hmm. Where everyone's having fun, but he's sitting off to himself, and as you go on, people can relate to it, and this is him not feeling well with his sister. She mm-hmm. wants to play, but he doesn't want to. So what I found with this book, children have been able to relate to this book, and all the books that I write, I want every child to be able to look into this book and to see themselves in this book, relate to it. And that's always my primary goal.
Yeah. As I'm looking at the pictures with you, I'm thinking that this is a wonderful book, especially if we're talking about emotions. This is a wonderful book to take a picture walk through. Maybe mm-hmm. even before you read the story, just kind of go through with your kids and have them look at the pictures and ask, what do you think this character is feeling right now? What do you think is happening here? And I think that that's the first step to really having a fun conversation with the story itself when we're talking about the different emotions and also letting your kid see that, I was right about that. I thought he was feeling lonely, and I was right. And how can we relieve that? How can we change that so he's feeling better?
And that is so great because actually that's what I have parents to do. When I have children who are having difficulties or having problems, I mail out Rex's Journey. And I have them to read it. If they're not young enough, maybe 4, or they can't quite read it, I have mom to read it to them. And I have her to do exactly that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when they start to act out and feel a certain type of way, I say to your child, what would Rex do in that situation? Mm. Yes. So it has been a very helpful tool within my practice for me to give to children, and they're so excited when they receive it because I autograph it and write a nice little thing to them, and I have kids say, Rex looks just like me. So yes, I do that a lot.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your practice and how long you mentioned you've been practicing for over 29 years.
Yes. Well, I opened up my practice in 2004, in March of 2004. So that's how long I've been in practice. And what I do within my practice, I see children, adults, and family. So I work with ADHD. I also work with autism kids, depression, almost everything. Yeah. But I see. Yes, I work with, a different variety of mental health disorders. I'm also, have to say, great at writing IEPs. I do things to support the parent with education and things like that. So, if I'm working with a parent and I see something, this child may need an IEP or a 504, I would tell the parents how to go through that process. And there has been cases where I have been contacted by the school, whether the teacher or the person who's over and ask me what I write, what I want to see within the IEP. And I've also attended some IEP meetings or, things like that, or 504, whatever they need. But I try to provide them with the tools that they need so that they can be successfully academically. So I help. I see a lot of things. I have a forensic background. I do forensic assessment evaluations and child custody evaluation. So I do a whole lot within my practice.
Yeah. That doctorate of psychology opens up so many doors for you.
Yes. I'm a doctor of counseling psychology, and I was trained in behavioral sciences.
Yeah. You mentioned breathing earlier, and I think that is something that's really important that a lot of people overlook. I think a lot of people kind of relate to it with yoga or some Eastern practices, and they think, well, that's kind of woo-woo stuff out there, and I it's not for me. But breathing can really make a difference. Can you talk a little bit about I don't know if we know physiologically why breathing in a certain way kind of helps calm us and focus and deal with our emotions a little bit better.
Well, what I found that if we do breathing correctly, you can feel it here. Because what it does, it grounds you and it centers you. And not only does it relaxes you, but it relaxes the muscle in your body. It helps with the tension and the stress. So like I say, for the younger children that I work with, I would tell them to breathe, to remember how you brought your birthday cake. Well, let's say when I'm working with adults and other people, the techniques of breathing that I like to do is I like to tell them, okay, 4, I want you to inhale, counting on 4. And then I want you to hold it for 4. And then I want you to let it out on 4. Now, if you do it correctly, you can feel something up here that makes you feel, so it calms you down. And what it does, it centers you. Mm-hmm. And usually it centers you and it grounds you. And usually when it does that, I like to tell people, okay, what do you say to yourself? What's your next step?
Yeah. So important. And just that practice that so many parents do of, when your kid is teaching your kid, when you feel like you're going to explode, stop, count to 10, breathe, and things are a little bit different. I think it would be great to kind of work with kids before they get to that point.
Yes.
To help them breathe and I think even, remembering to practice that kind of breathing when they're feeling great, and not having to wait until they're exploding. Maybe we can, put out some of that fire before it starts.
Yes, because with Rex's Journey, what it does, it teaches children how to self-regulate their emotions. Children who don't properly self-regulate their emotions when they're adults, they have issues sometimes, not able to handle stress, a high level of anxiety. And what we've seen too, children who don't know how to self-regulate their emotions, they are at an increased risk for developing anxiety, stress, even at that age. And things like that. And we can probably see it when they're in school, when they're taking exams, and they're worried about maybe the next person don't like me or don't want to talk to me and things like that. So if we teach children to self-regulate their emotions while they're younger, as they transition into adolescent and adulthood, they'll be better able to manage those emotions when they come up. Yeah. So it's very important.
You were mentioning, behavior changes, and that's a sign that something might not be going great in a kid's life. I think we can all recognize, when the kid who is typically a great kid, happy-go-lucky kid, comes in and is suddenly angry and is acting out. We notice that, and we are all aware of that. But I think there are other kids, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are other kids whose behavior changes in subtle ways and maybe not, acting out aggressively. Can you talk about some things that we should be aware of as parents to, some of those more subtle changes that we may not notice that are signs that our kids need some help?
Mhm. Or you might have a child who's very outgoing, and now that child is more of an introvert, don't want to hang out with friends, don't want to hang out with family,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. You see that a lot. You might have a child who don't want to go to school, but someone who used to love going to school, but now, I don't want to go to school. Always complaining. Maybe I have a headache or I have a tummy ache or something like that. Those are things to look at because there might be something going on at school that need to be explored to see why.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. And mostly too. And another thing, what I see with children, and I see this as children as young as 9 and 8. I'm seeing a lot of self-harming behavior in children at young ages. So I think we just need to pay attention, whether it sometimes can be in the form of pulling their hair out, scratching or even cutting themselves and things like that. I've noticed that in children too.
Mm-hmm.
So you just want to kind of just, pay attention and check in with your children. When you see a change, like you say, what's wrong? She's not the same. What's going on? To make sure, because a lot of time when they go to the self-harming behavior, they do it in places where parents can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had someone who was in the 3rd grade and she was cutting herself on her tummy. Okay. And things like that. So we just want to pay attention. Even, you're right, it doesn't have to be acting out. But when that child that was usually a happy-go-lucky person and now she's no longer, want to do certain things, we do need to inquire to try to find out what's going on.
Yeah. We've talked here in the podcast in the past about the fact that there are more and more kids who are experiencing anxiety and that are self-harming. And are there actually more kids that are becoming anxious, or are we better at identifying it and recognizing it?
I think we're probably better at identifying and recognizing it now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we do have a lot of children who have an anxiety disorder. Some have the obsessive type, some will have the generalized anxiety, and they do. And I tell you something else that happens a lot is that people diagnose ADHD for anxiety. And sometimes children just have anxiety because some of the symptoms are similar, but there's just a few that kind of, will veer off to let you know. So I've had children who the school probably said that they thought that they were ADHD, but after I spend time one-on-one with that child, because of the observation and the reaction to me within the session, in my mind, I would say it's not anxiety. But let's just go through the complete testing process and find out. And so the parents would do the testing process and they'll come back and say that the clinical psychologist said that it's anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we just have to think about all the other factors, that was going on. Children just like us, they move around from different places. They're in a new environment, the same things that we go through, they go through also. So, but I do see a lot of kids being diagnosed with ADHD, when in reality, sometimes it could be just anxiety.
Yeah. Interesting that you mentioned that. I know in our experience, and it's been 20 years, but my son moved into a new school, and we always knew that he had a lot of extra energy, but the people in the new school had known him since he was in kindergarten, and now they were, this child has ADHD, and you must get him medicated. And we went to our pediatrician, who we loved, and the pediatrician said, well, yeah, he kind of checks all the boxes, so let's give him this medication. My son was that 1 in a million kid who had a really severely bad reaction to the medication. Thankfully, I've background in social work, so I kind of recognize things. We're able to get him to a hospital to keep him safe. Unfortunately, the reaction at the hospital after we, kept them safe and the effects wore off, the reaction at the hospital wasn't well, maybe he doesn't have ADHD, and let's see what he might have. The reaction was, well, you just have to try another medication for him. And my beautiful wife and I said, no, we're not going to do that. But, you bring up a good point. I think, especially now, that label of ADHD, it is really put on lots of kids very quickly. And there's it's not like coronavirus where you can take a test and come up and it says, oh, yeah, this is coronavirus. It's very complicated. It's more of an art than a science, I think, in some aspects.
Yes, and you really have to, even with the medication doesn't work 100%. Mm-hmm. In order for it to be effective, children need to learn coping skills. Mm-hmm. And what I found too is that the parents can do things at home that will help that child transition when they're at school. Mm-hmm. If you provide that structure of environment at home. So what I do is educate parents as well. Because if this child is going to get better, I have to work with the parents. We have to work as a system, and things like that. So, and there's a lot of things that if you do at home, when that child gets into that classroom, he's going to remember that. Yeah. And he's going to know, okay, I got to pay attention. Yeah. So it's just things that, right, it's more of a science.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we hear a lot about schools need more money, and I agree. And we need to start sending kids to school earlier and earlier. And for families that need that's it's wonderful that support is out there. But what's unfortunate, I think, is that we don't, as a society, fund education for parents. We don't give them access to somebody like you who can sit down and teach them the skills and the techniques that they can in turn teach to their kids to kind of deal with these problems before they get to be a huge issue.
Yes. And I totally agree with that, because in order for a child to improve, if they're having certain issues, you have to have the family involved, because I can only do so much when I maybe see that child for maybe an hour, mm-hmm. But you're with him 24 hours a day, mm-hmm. or whatever. And so it's very important that you do these things to help mm-hmm. him also. And then when he comes in to see me, I reiterate those things and teach them new things. But yes, it's very important. Yeah. Children, the caregiver has to be involved in order for it to have, the effect that it needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. Rex's Journey this is your debut picture book. You've written other books for adults. Have you enjoyed writing the picture book in that process, and will you be writing more in the future?
Yes, I enjoy it. I just enjoy writing. Writing is very relaxing for me. And so what I want to do, since it's impossible for me to see every child in the world. So what I've done is that's why I write. That's why I wrote this book. And actually, when I write books, because there will be other children books, I write about things that I know that work. Mm-hmm. That works. So this, so I will be writing more.
Wonderful. Dr. Ambrose, please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and also find out more about Rex's Journey.
Okay. Well, you can visit my website, which is drambrosepassturner.com. And you can, the book is available on my website, or you can purchase the book. It can also be purchased at Mascot Books, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million. Mm-hmm. But if you just put it in, it comes up on the internet at places I've never heard of. I say, oh, they have my book. So but the ones my website, first choice, and drambrosepassturner.com, you have Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, Amazon, Mascot Books. I even saw it at Walmart, and some other place, Indie Bound, mm-hmm. So.
Wonderful. Yeah. It's kind of like this podcast. People come up to me and say, oh, I listened to your podcast on that. And I go, what's that?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
Yes.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Rex's Journey, the debut picture book from our guest, Dr. Ambrose Pass-Turner. Dr. Ambrose, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure to attend today, and thank you for the invite.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Maureen Llewellyn. She'll be here to celebrate the day the holidays blew away. It's a really, really fun book. You don't want to miss it. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. First, I want to start by thanking our guest, Dr. Ambrose Pass-Turner. Please be sure to check out Rex's Journey, helping children cope with emotion. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Bell Castro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.